Hey everyone, Matt Magee here, your Colorado real estate agent. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about an interview that I had with a good friend, Dan Cimino of Fidelity National Title. With all the questions that I'm often asked regarding title, I thought it would be good to put some of that to rest and kind of explain what title is, what commitment is, title insurance policy, etc. So pretty comprehensive discussion condensed into about 20-25 minutes. So hopefully you find it helpful. If you do, please like, subscribe, hit the notification button for future videos, and comment below if you have any questions or concerns. As always, you know where to find me if you have any questions regarding real estate or you would like to join our team with the constant value that we're looking to provide to elevate agents' lives to the next level. Thanks a lot, and I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, thanks for jumping on. I wanted to take an opportunity to introduce Dan Cimino from Fidelity National Title. With kind of the way of the world these days, I often get asked questions on title, both from a buyer's, seller's perspective, as well as agents on our team. So thought it would be best to bring Dan on and hit the topic on title. So thanks for coming on, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah. So Dan, if it's all right with you, maybe just give us a little brief background on yourself, and we can kind of jump into some of the questions that I often get asked.
Yeah. Yep. Real quick, back in '93, I joined a lender, so I started doing origination of loans in '93. 2002 is when I jumped into title, and I've been in title ever since. So
Nice.
it's been a good journey for sure.
Good
Yeah.
deal. So I guess we'll kind of start first and foremost with high level. What is title?
Yeah, and that's a great question because a lot of people wonder that, right? Let me start where, title insurance, unlike property and casualty insures the future, right? Title insurance insures the past. So if anything comes up once you purchase the property, you go to buy or sell it or refi, if something comes up, if you do have owner's title policy, then that covers that past liens or claims. It is a one-time premium. It's not like your property and casualty to where you have an annual premium. So it is just a one-time premium. One thing I do want to mention is, we hear a lot about this title lock, companies that report any suspicious recordings onto your title. I'm not gonna say don't do that, but I don't know if it really would be worth the money, because what title insurance does is fraudulent liens like that are trying to be placed on your property is insured by your title insurance. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Sure.
Yeah.
From the perspective of the real estate agent, on our contracts, we've got off record and on record. What from your perspective is the difference in those two items?
Yeah. So, obviously on record is anything that is recorded, right? That when we do search that property, that is shown. The off record is anything that could be recorded after the fact. That is maybe a dispute, right? That could be reported, but is not reported or recorded at the time that we do our search.
Okay. And are those items insured against? Do you get indemnities from the buyers and sellers?
Yes. And that's a great question, Matt. If we have what we call owner's extended coverage, right? So for an additional $75, it does cover the off-record claims and issues.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. So I guess kind of retracing in simple terms, and then just to clarify for any novices or anyone who's never been through the title insurance or pulling title process, when you say recorded, you mean recorded against the property with the county, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Great clarification. With the county, at the county clerk's and recording office. And normally it's recorded in the same county as the property is in, right? Sometimes by error, those are recorded in other counties, but we try to check that as well.
All right, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are kind of some of a realtor's, a buyer's, seller's best practices with respect to title? Once, let's say, most often this is going to happen once a property is under contract, correct?
Correct.
Title is going to be pulled by the title company. What are kind of some of the best practices that you would advise to somebody reviewing a title commitment?
Yeah, great. Another great question. What I would do is I would even take a step back prior to it going under contract. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But once you have a listing appointment, if it were me and if I was a real estate agent, I would pull an O&E on that, which stands for ownership and encumbrance, right?
Okay.
So it shows who owns it and what is liened against it, what's encumbered against it, right? So before you even go into that listing appointment, you have a clear idea of maybe some possible liens, how they're held on title. Sometimes a contract may not be written correctly just because the spelling of the name is not accurate with what's on title. Sometimes people don't even know if there's a mistake. It's funny, but there's times where people thought that they were on title and they're not. So then they don't be included in the contract, right? Then depending on how that O&E comes out, if there's issues, right? If there's liens or whatever, they can always say, look, this is what came up, may or may not be yours. However, let's have a discussion. If they are, then let's take care of them now before you actually get a contract, right?
Sure.
If there is even more of a question, then I would advise doing a to be determined, TBD commitment. As long as you're going to list it, we can do that. An O&E is a quick search. A TBD is really an examined search,
Okay.
just like if we had a contract. But what you don't have is the buyer's, the buyer's agent, the lender, right? But everything else is in there.
Sure.
And then with that, if there's issues, then with the to be determined, then we can tackle those and take care of them prior to getting the contract and the commitment going out. Then we're ahead of the game.
Sure. So from an agent's perspective, the O&E really allows you to be proactive with respect to anything that may come up after you're already under contract. Also could give you an opportunity to discuss any potential liens, give you an opportunity to discuss with the seller, what's going to happen from the perspective of clearing up these liens, even if it's just as simple as the mortgage and then your equity portion thereafter from your listing price. So yeah, I think that's super beneficial. What is, from an O&E perspective, is there a cost involved?
Yes, there's a $5 charge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing.
we didn't have to charge for them years ago, but then Division of Insurance, the regulations, CFPB basically said if we provide something of value, we have to charge.
Sure.
So we all pretty much, and everything is filed, right? Filed rate. So we all
Yep.
pretty much said, okay, if we do, then it's going to be minimal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just $5.
I
Yeah.
think that's great. And, I've done it in the past. I would say I don't do it all the time because sometimes these things happen pretty quickly. How long would it take, if an O&E is ordered, what's the turnaround time on those typically?
Yeah, they're pretty quick. If you order like first thing in the morning, you'll get them with before like 12 o'clock. You'll get them in
Yeah.
a couple of hours easy.
So there's really no reason not to do these for your clients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The only time if it's like towards the end of the day, 5:36,
Sure.
then it'll probably be the next morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally understandable.
Yep.
I mean, I think even a 1-day turnaround for things in real estate these days is pretty impressive. So
Right.
I think from a value perspective, taking that to your clients or your customers just to know and have an initial discussion is huge.
Absolutely.
If you do an O&E, does it help with respect to preparing a title commitment just because you already know it's in the pipeline and you know that, assuming that this thing is going to be listed and go under contract, you've already kind of got that in the works and you've seen it once. Does that make a difference?
On an O&E, it does not,
Okay.
because that's two separate. But if we were to go a step further and do a to be determined, then it would.
Okay.
Then the file would be open. Yep.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Another thing about best practices, the more information that we have up front once we get the contract, buyer's agent info, lender info, transaction coordinator, anybody that needs to be copied or involved in the commitment or any delivery up front is a huge help. And it just really helps the process move quickly.
Sure. Kind of puts you in touch with everybody and helps from a communication perspective and just allows workflow to go better. Yep, I get it.
Exactly. Yep. And then once the commitment's out, let's sit down and chat about the requirements, right? If hopefully we've gone through, if there was issues, O&E, TBD, we've taken care of that. But if there is, then, we can always discuss, what the requirements are, what liens need to be paid off. If there's things that may come up that wasn't on an O&E, maybe even on a to be determined, could be if there's an ILC required or statement of authority, if there's LLCs or trusts, the communication with that is very important.
Yep.
And then the other part of that would be, knowing, the buyers and sellers agent, knowing if we have out-of-state buyers or sellers, that's always good to know. Then we could prepare a mail out. We can prepare it days ahead. So then we do meet closing deadline or closing time.
Yep.
If there's a divorce or bankruptcy or anything else that we need to know. I just wanted to throw those few little things in there.
Yeah, no, perfect. I think that's great information, and often that gets overlooked, and it's a question that may not be addressed up front sometimes. And yeah, I'm with you. I think communication up front always leads to a smoother transaction, because you hate to be kind of blindsided with some of these things where it can adjust your timelines, right?
Yep.
So I'm with you. That and a few things that you mentioned kind of lead me into the next section when you're talking about some of these conditions, et cetera. Can you maybe take a second and just like briefly, we don't need to get into the nitty gritty and the details, but maybe just briefly discuss how a title commitment's organized?
Absolutely. Yep. So the first thing that you'll see is your transmittal page, which shows who is all contacted in the commitment once it's released. Then you'll see a Schedule A, and that's your proposed owners insured, right? Who's going to be insured, then the loan policy amount and who's going to be insured. It shows the premium amounts listed, itemized, and then it also shows the legal description, which is very important because I might add, we as title companies do not insure the address, we insure the legal description.
Yep.
So we need to make sure that that legal description is correct. So having several eyes on that is very, very important.
Perfect. And that's probably one of the benefits of the O&E, right? Because you get it up front and you can ensure that as you're getting your listing prepared,
right,
your legal description is matching, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. That's very important. And then you'll see a Schedule B1, B Part 1, which is requirements. It's what is required prior to closing and funding or at closing and funding, right? Like payoffs, mortgage loans, judgments, mechanics liens, tax liens, all those have to be paid off prior to closing and funding on that property. So that's pretty simple. There might be other requirements. Judgments are actually a name, it doesn't attach to the property. It's actually to the name of the person.
Okay.
But there's always that risk of that coming back around and somebody attaching that to the property that the buyer just bought. So we just want to make sure that all of that is done, cleared, and paid off.
Sure.
Okay. Then the next Schedule B2 is exceptions. Those are the exceptions are what we will not insure. And I always like to put it as we will insure everything except.
Yep.
Right. And then there's a list of the exceptions. You're talking, mineral rights, water rights, easements, HOA covenants, conditions, right-of-ways, that kind of thing.
Okay.
The buyer's agent really is the one that should be paying closer attention to the exceptions, the requirements, did I say exceptions? Anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
So
you said exceptions.
Okay. Thank you. And then, obviously the requirements, but on the buyer's agent is really, if I was a buyer's agent, I'd be paying very close attention to the exceptions. And there may be some exceptions that were dated way back that come up. If it's a commitment that we send out, call me, we'll double check. Sometimes we put exceptions on there that don't necessarily need to stay on there. So give me a call. I'll get a hold of my title department, and we'll run it back and forth, and they may or may not drop it off the commitment. So there's always a good conversation to have about those.
Perfect.
And sometimes they're hard to understand. You click on the link and it's like, man, I'm not an attorney. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And
I've
I
been
even do
there.
that.
I've been
Yeah.
there with
Heck yeah.
HOA docs and easements and everything else, and it can lead you down a rabbit hole for sure. But I think they're important to look at. And the thing that I would say is, for buyers, sellers, and agents, and title for that matter, we're not attorneys. To the extent everything, let's say, Dan, we have a discussion about it and it's just like a little bit questionable. Right. I would say, like, check with an attorney, it's for a relatively minimal cost to ensure that you know what you're getting with respect to property and title, insured and not insured. It can be a good double check, right? And a relatively minimal investment to ensure that you're getting what you think you're getting.
That's a great point, Matt, because we do not, we can only say so much, but then there's a point is we're not practicing attorneys, right?
Yeah.
So we got to stay out of that liability or risk.
Yep.
Yep.
So yeah, I certainly get it and I understand. And it's also like, a little bit of a CYA from my perspective. I never want to lead my client down a path where if I don't know, I'm speculating. So I have read lots and lots of title policies and commitments over the course of my career.
Sure.
But that being said, it's nice to, sometimes have that expert opinion and one degree of separation with my clients, and also just helps them feel better. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yep.
I don't think it's always necessary, but if you have some funky things on title, it can certainly be worth it.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned this, I just thought of this and we didn't talk about this, Dan, but like, can you just maybe briefly describe, the difference between a title commitment and a title policy?
Yeah, great. Another great question. So, a title commitment is a commitment to issue a policy, right? It's almost like a lender approval or pre-approval letter.
Yeah.
It's like we haven't approved the loan, but we're prepared to approve it as long as you meet these conditions, right?
Yep.
So the commitment is really closely thought of in my mind as that. It's like, look, here's the commitment. Here are the requirements, exceptions. We're committed to issue the policy as long as everything is met.
Yep.
And then the policy comes 30 to 45 days later as an insurance policy, as a deck page, just like you have home and auto. Then you have your policy in front of you. So the commitment is just a commitment to issue policy. And then once the policy is issued, that's actually showing your coverage.
Yep. Perfect. So from a buyer's and seller's perspective, the buyer gets the commitment as the transaction closes, it moves forward. And then the day of closing, they pay their commitment fee, right? Their title policy fee.
Right.
And then it moves to an actual policy, correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Well
Perfect.
Said. Yep.
I guess you've kind of hit home with respect to most of the questions I have. One last thing is, for agents specifically, or buyers and sellers, or an investor, that may want to reach out to you, what are some additional resources that a title company, will often provide outside of maybe an O&E? Are there any additional resources that, from a title perspective or any other perspective that Fidelity might provide to its clients?
Yeah, absolutely. All good questions, Matt, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have so many different resources here at Fidelity. I even, it's funny. I joke to some people because I say, look, think of me as a resource, right? We may not be doing any business right now. You have your loyalties to other title companies, but think of me as a resource. When you can't find something, reach out. We have so many things. A lot of times I don't even know that we have it until I research it, right?
Sure.
Because Fidelity Title is such a big title insuring company. It's like the largest insurer in the United States and worldwide. So, and we can even go out to other states.
Okay.
I can't personally close the transaction. We'd refer it to like the closest office, right?
Yep.
But we also have other tools like net sheet calculators, right, that I can register agents for that can help them do a net sheet calculation at any time of the day or the weekend. We have a program called Value Check. That's really where you order your O&Es. I'm always saying if you don't, I work how my clients like to work. If they say, sign me up, I'll order them myself, or sign me up and would you order them for me? Absolutely. Right.
Okay.
There's also comps in there and home price index, which means what was the house sold for back 3 or 4 years ago? What's the value in today? Right. We have education classes. We have access to farming. When I think about farming, I always want to throw out analytics, right? Predictive analytics.
Yep.
And these are things that I love to sit down with agents on a one-to-one basis and go, okay, here's a few things that we have. And man, I don't even go there. It's like, okay, what do you need? Right?
Sure.
How can I help you? What do you need? And
Sure.
then I start pulling all my resources and then we start talking about those more of in focus. Right.
Yeah. I love that. It turns into a bit more of a partnership than a customer relationship.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Part of the team. Right.
Cool.
I always joke, part of the team, but not the payroll.
Yeah, exactly. Best of both worlds.
And as far as buyers and sellers, not necessarily agents, kind of the same thing. If your client has a question about title, or maybe there's maybe they're catching wind of a claim that might hit their property. Maybe they're going to sell their house and all of a sudden the neighbor's going, well, that fence is really encroaching in my property, and that, and they start talking that, call me, right?
Yeah.
And I'll walk them through that. Absolutely. Sometimes people lose a copy of their policy, right? Be more than happy to help them retrieve another copy or emailed copy or whatever.
Perfect.
Yeah. So, however I can help, I'm here.
Cool, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time. I think that's all I have. Is there anything else that you want to add? I think this is a really good crash course in title. I think it's going to be valuable for agents, buyers, and sellers alike. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to kind of get this out there and put it out in the world, and hopefully it'll help us both out.
Absolutely. I like it. Yeah, I really nothing else other to add, but if there's any questions, give me a call. My phone number is 303-909-8848. So give me a call at any time. I'm happy to answer anybody's questions.
Cool, man. Sounds good. Hey, I really appreciate your time and look forward to doing some business with you.
I look forward to it as well. Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right. You bet. Bye.